Hey again, everyone. Welcome to the Voice of College Football here on a fine Monday at noon, high noon Eastern time. And hope many of you can join us. So whether you're just enjoying a summer day or at work like the Rod Farva, sorry to do that to you, but if we can distract in a good way, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The boss will understand. So I had been alerted by my social media guy that's become my social media guy. So a little bit more on that at some point, but that the preseason AP poll was to be released today at noon Eastern time. So I thought, bam, let's go live. Let's see it be released and respond right then and there and talk to all of you. Later today, 4 p.m. Eastern time, we've got Notre Dame Fighting Irish live with Nathan Urbach. He'll be joining us to break down Notre Dame football and with a special announcement there as well, which leads me into, did you check out the tweet I just sent maybe a half hour ago concerning our post-game shows? Our menu is expanding and exploding by the day. I think this is going to be the final roll call, though. I think this is pretty much all I can handle. So I tweeted out earlier today with all the logos of the post-game shows that are going to be presented here at the Voice of College Football. Get this. Miami, Florida State, the SEC, big wrap-up show on Thursday night, Saturday, and Sunday. Texas A&M, Florida, LSU, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, and most likely Oregon on board as well in some way, shape, or form. Notre Dame as well. So post-game shows following all the games from all the teams that I just listed. So if you are a fan of one of those teams, I hope you're subscribed to that team channel, and I will keep letting all of you know, because I know many people are going to miss it or forget it. That's understandable, that we've got post-game shows available on all those channels concerning all those teams. The SEC teams are going to be simulcast on the SEC channel, and we may have a Big Ten channel starting up soon as well. Here we go into the comments. And the phone lines are open at 860-499-3332. There's Rod. Mr. HD. So the AP poll's been released. I just checked a couple minutes before we came on, and I did not see it yet. So Miami at 14. They are 16, I believe, in the coaches poll. Ohio State at number 4 in the AP and the coaches poll. Cincinnati at 8. I believe they're at number 10 in the coaches poll. Good to see David here. Good to see whomever else I missed. Roberto. Sam tells us top 5 is a no-brainer, no controversy at all. That's what it's going to be, especially when you've got 65 people voting. Sue, what did I say? What did I say? Did I say, hey, guys? Did I say, what did I say? What did I say? I didn't say, hey, boys. So good to see you, Sue. Especially good to see Sue today. Buckeyes, Georgia seem to be that 4-5 debate right now. Of course, that's all going to be washed away soon. Clemson, Georgia play. And it's not necessarily going to work out in regards to the college football playoff selection. I hate when people say that. It all works out. Well, yeah, it works out because Selection Sunday comes and they select 4 teams, so it has to work out there has to be a conclusion. Yes, there's a conclusion. That doesn't mean it worked. That doesn't mean that the selections work. All right. Got Jordan here, the Rod Farva, pretty much supplying our graphic today. And I guess it's time to jump into it then, since it's out there. Okay. Oh my goodness. Give me the poll. I want the poll. I don't want an article. There we go. So at number 25, we've got Arizona State, a team that missed the coaches poll. And I've got to think that that had to do with the controversy surrounding Herm Edwards and the coaching staff. Two coaches are on temporary leave. I had not heard of any updates concerning those two assistant coaches for Arizona State, but still under investigation. And a lot of controversy surrounding that team coming into the season. But we had seen them in a number of people's way too early top 25, including myself. I believe I had Arizona State at number 15 in my way too early top 25. Am I going to take this situation into consideration? I'll take it into consideration. I don't know if it's going to affect my perspective on the season. I'm going to have to look at the games in which I believe that they'll be competitive, meaning those 50-50 kind of games. But Arizona State at number 25 and absent from the coaches poll. Another team that is absent from the coaches poll that made its way into the preseason AP top 25 is Utah at 24. A lot of people like Utah, including myself. My predictions on Utah have yet to be released. I believe my predictions on Arizona State yet to be released. I've got a lot of catching up to do. Louisiana at 23, of course, out of the Sun Belt Conference. They had an amazing season last year, only losing to Coastal Carolina, and that would have been a heck of a rematch that we were deprived of in the conference championship game because of COVID. Louisiana with the one loss by, I believe, 3 points, like a 31-28 type game to Coastal Carolina. And, of course, Coastal Carolina undefeated in the regular season before losing to Liberty in the bowl game. And that was a great game, too. And voila, Coastal Carolina is at number 22. So the chief rivals and best teams by far in the Sun Belt, at least as it stands right now. I'm sure Appalachian State will have something to say about it. They are ranked at 22 and 23 in the nation, and they were razor close, of course, last season. Texas checks in at 21. I believe the Longhorns were 19 in the coaches poll. And that could be what we have here. Yes, very nice. No, that's the PV rank. I would like to see the coaches poll next to it. Anyway, we've got Texas at 21, Washington at 20. I believe they were 21 in the coaches poll. The Huskies coming off that 3-1 campaign. Jimmy Lake going to coach his first full season. Penn State was, I believe, number 20 in the coaches poll. Check in at number 19 here. Iowa at 18. They were also 18 in the coaches poll. The Big Ten stacks up with another team at Indiana, 17 in the coaches poll, 17 in the AP. Not a big difference there. So at the bottom rung, we've got two teams, Utah and Arizona State out of the Pac-12 that did not appear in the coaches poll, but squeak in from the Pac-12 in the AP poll. At number 16, a team that was 13th in the preseason poll by the coaches. LSU at number 16. USC at 15. Miami, there they are. The Canes at 14, number 16 in the coaches poll. Florida at 13. I believe the Gators were 11 in the coaches poll. Wisconsin's at number 12, 3 spots higher than their coaches ranking. Oregon 11. I believe the Ducks are 12 in the coaches poll. Top 10. North Carolina 10. The Canes or the Heels were at 9 in the coaches poll. Notre Dame at 9 here in the AP poll. Notre Dame at 9. 2 spots lower than the coaches poll. Cincinnati 8. Bearcats at 10 in the coaches poll. So no discrepancies more than 3 spots anywhere. Iowa State at 7. And the landing spot for everybody else in the top 7 appears to be exactly the same, aside from Clemson and Oklahoma. So Iowa State at 7, Texas A&M 6, Georgia 5, Ohio State 4, Clemson Tigers 3, number 2 in the coaches poll. Oklahoma at number 2, flip-flop with Clemson there, and the Alabama Crimson Tide at number 1. With 47, not quite as dominant a vote in the AP as in the coaches poll. Alabama, 63 of 65 first place votes in the coaches poll, and they've got 47 first place votes by AP. 6 go to Oklahoma, 6 to Clemson, and Ohio State picks up a vote, as does Georgia at 3. 3 votes for Georgia. So with the Buckeyes at 4 and Georgia at 5, and the Buckeyes with 2 less number 1 votes, you can see that Ohio State was more firmly entrenched in that 4 spot over Georgia at 5. So we see the Pac-12 picking up 2 additional teams with Arizona State and Utah, and the top 5 remains the same. Actually, the top 7 remain the same. Actually, the top 6 remain the same from the coaches poll to the AP, with Iowa State moving up in the AP poll. All right. I released my thoughts on the coaches poll. They would be similar here because there's not much difference. There is not much difference here. It would be interesting to shut down all media after the national championship game of the previous season. So national championship games played, boom, shut down all social media, all media, period. Everybody has to think for themselves. Everybody has to evaluate the teams coming into the next season based on their own evaluation of the personnel gains, the personnel losses, whether that be through transfers, NFL draft, etc., recruiting. Look at the classes, and then also evaluate what did that team do last year. Do I believe that they underachieved or overachieved, and then come out with a ranking? I guarantee that these rankings would be more sporadic, that they would be more sporadic from person to person and from poll to poll. There is a general concept, because there is so much information that's out there and so many opinions out there that just kind of follow each other in terms of groupthink. These are the top 5. And then you've got a group of Notre Dame, Iowa State, Texas A&M, North Carolina, Cincinnati. They're in that next wave. And then we've got a lot of Oregon, Wisconsin, Penn State, USC, Miami. They're in that phase. And then you can do whatever you want at the end. But we got to get in Coastal Carolina and Louisiana. Now, I'm not saying that it wouldn't take the same form and shape, but we would have more sporadic picks if there was no information flow out there and if there were no opinions out there, because people copy other people. There's a groupthink mentality. Bobby, good to see you. Sam says the AP poll looks more accurate. Utah and Arizona State slipping in there compared to the coaches poll. And I'm trying to think who would have been at the bottom. Ole Miss made it into the coaches poll. And I can't think of the other team that would have been in there instead of Utah and Arizona State. It was Ole Miss, and I can look at it in just a second. Yakov is still looking for Michigan. Yakov looking for Michigan. Michigan Got to go to the other votes. And I know you're poking the Michigan fans, Yakov. Oklahoma State checks in at 26, Ole Miss at 27, TCU 28, Liberty 29, Auburn 30, Michigan at 32 behind NC State. Northwestern, Boise State, Nevada, BYU, Ball State, Houston, Boston College, UCF, West Virginia, UAB, Army, and UCLA also received votes. Houston with 5 votes. Ball State with 6 votes. 6 points. So if everybody voted them at number 25, I guess that would have been 6 people. We don't know that. But something in that range. Nevada, with one of the best quarterbacks in the country, Carson Strong, receiving votes. Bobby, it's Alabama and the rest of y'all. I sure hope not. I hope that we have a more competitive landscape of college football, both in regards to Alabama and everybody else, and also in looking at the elite and everybody else. Looking at the top 5 and everybody else, and then Alabama and everybody else. I hope that we get something different. So, yes, this would be disappointing for Michigan because even though everybody focuses, or it seems like people, I shouldn't say everybody focuses on that 2-4 season last year, that was an aberration under Harbaugh, or it was the beginning of the end. It's either an aberration or it's the beginning of the end. His other teams finished ranked, aside from 2017, and that team was still 8-5. They just imploded at the end with a couple consecutive losses. But Harbaugh's first team started unranked and surprised everyone, finishing basically in the top 10 at 10-3. And then much was expected after that, and they finished in the top 15 the other seasons until 2-4. So it wasn't me, Sue. That's good to hear. It's that mean guy, David Knight. Yakov, Mark, were you ever an AP voter or a Heisman voter? No, in neither case. So, my first job was a news job for 3 years. Then I moved into sports. And when I had the news job, I also did play-by-play. So I had some sports on my resume at that point. Then I went to Mississippi, was the sports director at the CBS station in Tupelo, Columbus. And that's really, that 6 to 7 years should have been when I had a vote in the top 25 and some kind of Heisman vote. I don't know how that's determined. I don't even know of any. I knew a lot of broadcasters, sportscasters in the state and in Alabama. Most of the guys that I interacted with on a regular basis were in Mississippi and Alabama and a few other states, Louisiana and so forth. I don't remember anybody, even guys that were around for 20, 25 years, having an AP vote or a Heisman vote. And I thought that was discriminatory. Basically, the AP at that point, and this was a different age, it was a different era, it was the mid to late 90s, that the newspaper industry was obviously thriving at that point, and all the voters were the beat writers for those particular teams, which I thought was a bit short-sighted because those writers were so entrenched in those particular teams. They were so entrenched. That's what they covered. They went to practice every day. They just were entrenched in covering those particular teams. If it was the Mississippi State beat guy, then he covered Mississippi State. He thought about nothing else. and I'm sure I'm over stereotyping or over generalizing. There are obviously college football nerds, and then there are guys that are just, they really love college football, but they're focused on their one team that they cover on the beat, and that's it. So I thought that a number of those guys that I interacted with were not knowledgeable on college football nationwide. And they just filled in the blanks because they knew what everybody else voted. And they might think, don't really like Michigan. I'm not going to have them 8 like everybody else. I'm going to put them down at 11 because I heard this or saw this, or I just have never liked them. And so I never thought that the AP landscape was really that fair or equitable or representative of the media out there. I don't know if that's changed. Probably not. They're probably all AP writers. So I don't know if there are any broadcasters in that poll. There probably are now. And the same thing with the Heisman vote. And this is what this is Yakov, what gives you an indication of how screwed up the world is. And this is not an important thing. There are a lot of important screwed up things out there that we see every day and currently. But this is one way in which it's screwed up in a sports sense that doesn't matter. But I covered 3 college football teams every day: Alabama, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. You guys have come to know how much I love college football and how much I've followed it my whole life. So I knew what was going on in the national scene as much as I do now. And I did not have an AP vote for the top 25, nor a Heisman vote. But you know what they gave me? I was given an all-star Major League Baseball all-star vote. I'm not talking about for the all-star game, but for the final all-star lineup, the official Associated Press all-stars. There wasn't a Major League Baseball team within 500 miles of me. I was in Mississippi. The Atlanta Braves were the closest. They were 500 miles away, or whatever it was. They were 5 or 6 hours away. And I was given an AP all-star vote. I covered 3 college football teams. I did not cover any Major League Baseball teams. They gave me an all-star vote for the Major League Baseball final all-star team. Okay. Bobby thinks LSU is highly overrated. Discussion about USC. And David, I don't know what that one more year for Clay Helton's going to look like in terms of the bar. I don't know if he can skate by at 8-4. And I think 9-3 is going to be difficult to fire. They could still go to the Pac-12 championship game at 9-3. I think 10-2, he's safe. 9-3, he's probably safe. 8-4, they may be getting tired of just 8-4, run of the mill, 8-4, barely making the top 25. Dominic is excited for some kind of a cup. Next Sunday. Lock it in. Jeremiah, they have to be undefeated. They lose to anybody. They won't make the playoffs. Highly unlikely. Talking about USC. Auburn, Bobby, not ranked. No, you love that. Canes coming in at 14. Coaches poll 16. Auburn expected to be down. Everybody says that 6-6 range with Brian Harsin in his first season. And yes, Mr. HD, Bama did lose to Bo Nix. They also annihilated Bo Nix. So right now, Alabama is, I'm losing track of Bo Nix seasons. 2, 3. Was that his third? Yeah. 18, 19, 20. Was he 18 or was that still Jarrett Stidham? No, Jarrett Stidham was the 17 team that went to the SEC championship game and beat Bama. So Bo Nix, I believe, is 1-1. Got the 18 win. Got the no. I think he's 1-2, right? 1-2. I'm a little bit foggy on the 2018 Alabama Auburn game and whether Stidham came back after the 17 season for one more year or was that Bo Nix? He's going to be a junior, 19 and 20, now 21. Of course, everybody gets another season in there. Sue wants to see Penn State beat Auburn. Well, if Penn State's any good, they probably will. Okay, yeah. So Stidham was in 18, so Bo Nix is 1-1 against Bama. Okay. Fragrance Place does not understand Cincinnati getting number 9. I don't know if that means that they are too high or too low. I'm guessing that they believe it could be a fine female, just like Sue out there, that Cincinnati should be lower. So they're not 9, they're 8, and they're 10 in the other poll. Sam, SEC's overall strength will be exposed this year. Yes, Bama and Georgia, but this won't be a good year for the SEC. I can't necessarily agree with that. I don't know how you rate a good year. I would say that the SEC is going to do what the SEC does. This is the point. I think too many times we rank these conferences based on how they're performing against themselves. And that all comes out to 500 regardless. So there was a season, let's say in 2016, in which the SEC just beat itself up. Bama was the great team that went to the championship game. Everybody else, there were a ton of 8-4 teams like LSU and Auburn. But typically there's another team besides Alabama in the top 5 to 10, maybe another one. There are other 11-1, 10-2, very strong 9-3 teams. That was the one season we did not have that. The SEC outside the conference, and that's where you can make the evaluation. You can't make the evaluation in conference play about a conference. It's very difficult to do because they all go 500. So the SEC has those main matchups that we have to look out for. Alabama, Miami, Auburn, Penn State, LSU, UCLA, Mississippi State's playing North Carolina State, Ole Miss and Louisville, Florida, Florida State, Georgia, Georgia Tech to a certain extent. Of course, Georgia and Clemson, big one. The thing about the Georgia-Clemson game, though, in terms of conference comparison, is that we know that Clemson is by far the gold standard in the ACC. So if they lose that game by 10 points, that is not a good look for the ACC, and it's not a good indicator because Clemson is the team, and that's it. If Georgia loses, And again, I'm not talking about from a Georgia perspective in terms of what they need to do or how they should be perceived, but the conference, we don't know who the best teams in the SEC are going to be in terms of any kind of order. We believe Alabama's the best, then probably Georgia, then probably some combination of LSU, Texas A&M, Florida. But there's so many up there that Georgia could lose to Clemson, and then Georgia could turn out to be not as good as, let's say, LSU and Texas A&M and Alabama. They could be the fourth best team in the conference. We know that unless this is a completely unprecedented year in the ACC, that Clemson is the best team in the ACC, and they are playing either the best team in the SEC or the second best or the third best or the fourth best, probably the second or third best. Ori asking, saw a good question posed on Twitter. Which top 10 preseason team will finish unranked? Last 19 seasons, I've talked about this in the past, bar 2019, a top 10 preseason team finished unranked. Love that, Ori. Love that contribution right there. That's a great question. I did some of my own numbers crunching to determine, at least over a span of years, just about 7 teams out of the top 25 we can expect. About 7 out of the preseason top 25 will not finish ranked. Therefore, another 7 will that are unranked preseason. So 7 spots are going to be missed by the pollsters. And here, Ori's looking at the top 10. Who's going to fall out? The last time an outsider of the top 10 won the national championship was Florida State, number 11 in 2013. The last time a team near the bottom of the poll won it, I produced a video on this a few months ago, so check it out. Auburn, number 22, with Cam Newton in 2010, went on to win the BCS championship game. The last time an unranked team won the national championship was sometime in the poll era. I had that in the video, but I don't remember that team. It was someone in the 80s. So, which top 10 preseason team will finish unranked? So, your candidates are Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Oklahoma, Clemson, Texas A&M, Iowa State, Notre Dame, North Carolina, Cincinnati. I believe that I would go with, if one of them will not make it, I believe it will probably be North Carolina. North Carolina could win. They could win the Coastal Division at, let's say, 9-3 or 10-2 and lose. They could be 10-2. North Carolina could be 10-2. Oh, finish unranked. So we're talking 8-5 range, possibly 9-4, more like 8-5 range. So that's maybe a North Carolina team that could go 8-4, still win the Coastal with a loss to Notre Dame outside the conference. 8-4, lose the conference championship game to go 8-5 and lose the bowl game. Or North Carolina doesn't make it to the ACC championship game at 8-4 and loses a bowl game 8-5. You've got Cincinnati, of course. If Cincinnati loses 2 games, they're still going to be ranked 11-2. They would have to lose 3 games to potentially not be ranked as a group of 5. But that's a good one right there. I don't see Iowa State not being ranked. They do play Iowa. They lose to Iowa. And if they lose 3 Big 12 games, They could lose to Oklahoma, TCU, and Texas, let's say. Iowa State, then they're going to be 8-4. They lose a bowl game, they're 8-5. That's the recipe there. So let's see this here. No calls yet. 860-499-3332. I'll get the number up in just a second. Okay. So let's look at preseason. Preseason top 10 last year in the AP: Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma, LSU. Bingo, there's your team that didn't finish ranked. Penn State, bingo, there's another one, did not finish ranked. Florida, Oregon, bingo, there's another one that did not finish ranked out of the AP top 10 last year, and then Notre Dame. 3 of the top 10 teams in last year's preseason poll did not finish ranked. Ori is telling us that 2019, they all finished ranked, so we will bypass that year. In 2018, top 10, 2018, preseason: Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Wisconsin. Wisconsin did not finish ranked. They were 8-5 after they won the bowl game. They could have snuck in there. They did not. So there's your 2018 team, Wisconsin. 2018, Ohio State, Washington, Oklahoma, Miami did not finish ranked. Auburn did not finish ranked. And Penn State. So 3 teams in 2018 in the preseason top 10 did not finish ranked. This is a great note right there, Ori. Wisconsin, Miami, Auburn, top 10 teams in the preseason in 2018 did not finish ranked. 2017 preseason: Alabama, Ohio State, Florida State did not finish ranked. USC, Clemson, Penn State, Oklahoma, Washington, Wisconsin, Oklahoma State. Let me double check on them. I believe they would have. Yes, 14. So in 2017, the team that did not finish ranked out of the top 10 was Florida State at 3. 2016, that was, of course, the year that they played Alabama in the opener, and DeAndre Francois got flattened and knocked out of the season. 2016, your AP top 10 in the preseason was Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, Florida State, LSU, Ohio State, Michigan, Stanford, Tennessee, Notre Dame, who did not finish ranked. Well, Notre Dame finished 4-8 that year. So there's your team in 2016. I believe everybody else finished ranked. LSU did not have a great season, though. But they still, I believe, were ranked, yes, 13. Okay. They beat Lamar Jackson in the Citrus Bowl that year. 2015. Whoa. 2015. Preseason top 10: Ohio State, TCU, Alabama, Baylor, Michigan State, Auburn, Oregon, USC, Georgia, Florida State. Okay. Did not finish ranked. Possibly Baylor. 2015 Baylor. Yes, they did. Yeah, they beat Oregon. They beat North Carolina in the Russell Athletic Bowl. Michigan State, yes. Auburn did not. I don't believe Auburn in 2015. Auburn's your team in 2015 that finished unranked after starting the season in the top 10. In 2014, your top 10 preseason, Florida State, Alabama, Oregon, Oklahoma. They did not finish ranked, I don't believe. 8-5. Ohio State, Auburn. I don't believe they finished ranked after losing to Wisconsin in the Outback Bowl. UCLA, Michigan State, South Carolina. South Carolina did not finish ranked. They went 7-6 that year. Baylor. So you had multiple teams in 2014. Oh, we could do this forever. All right, good stuff there, Ori. Love that. So most years it was 2 or 3 teams. So forget one, could be 2 or 3 teams. Could be Iowa State, North Carolina, some combination of teams. Jeremiah, I don't think they value Pac-12 champs very highly. If it happens, I will be surprised, but Oklahoma or Ohio State would have to fall out of contention. As long as Georgia and Clemson play a close game, the loser is not going to be hurt much. So the committee is going to give them a ton of respect. So if everything holds to form, let's say and Clemson wins this game by a field goal, as is the line in Vegas, those teams aren't going to lose their spots. They're going to stay where they're at. Clemson's going to get a little bit more of a nudge toward the top, toward number 1. Georgia's going to hold at 5 because they just lost to the number 2 team in the country, neutral site, down to the wire. But where it's going to hurt Georgia is, of course, an SEC championship game because they will already have a loss. And if they lose a second game, despite however the committee views them or respects them, unless this would be an interesting scenario if Georgia loses razor close games to both Clemson and Alabama, and those 2 teams go on to win conference championships with undefeated records. Is Georgia going to be given a spot based on a 12-2 season or an 11-2 season at that point with 2 close losses to possibly number 1 and number 2? Cincinnati, Notre Dame. I'm just letting you guys know that there will be consideration for Georgia if they lose 2 close games. That if the Big 12 is not good, let's say the Big 12 doesn't fare very well outside the conference and Oklahoma has 1 loss as a conference champion. Or let's say one of the other conferences knocks itself out. Either Oklahoma or Ohio State are like 2-loss champions, or other teams win it. Indiana wins the Big 10, Wisconsin wins the Big 10, Iowa State or TCU win the Big 12 or something. I'm just telling you that the committee is going to look long and hard at a Georgia team with 2 losses if they lost to the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country, both 31-28 games. 31-28 kind of games with 2 losses. And Georgia's going to have wins over Florida, Kentucky, whomever they play in the SEC West Division, which would be, I believe, Auburn and Arkansas. Dennis, Miami 14. How would that look? 2 losses and a bowl win, 1 regular season loss and a championship loss. How would that look? 2 losses and a bowl win? That would look fine, as long as they're not losing to North Carolina, giving up 800 yards of total offense, and losing to somebody else by 25 points like they lost to Clemson. If they can lose respectably, if they can give Bama, if they can stay within 2 scores of Bama, lose another game, they got 2 losses. Let's say North Carolina is that head-to-head loss, of course, in the ACC, and the Heels go on to the conference championship game. Miami goes 10-2 with 2 respectable losses, win a bowl game. They're 11-2, and they're going to finish fringe top 10. Mike, that is Notre Dame, and that's not in the SEC. And that's Notre Dame losing to Clemson 34-10 in a game that wasn't even as close as 34-10. It was 31-3 halfway through the third quarter. So that was Notre Dame losing, in that scenario, losing 2 games to Clemson. So losing to the same team and losing at home, losing to the same team, getting blown out. That's not my scenario. That's Georgia losing neutral site games, losing to the top 2 teams in the country, losing razor close games. Not the same. Me make it happen. Tennessee is the biggest stadium in the SEC. I know Alabama and LSU have pushed over 100,000, but I guess they're still number 1. Chris is asking about my thoughts about the Pac-12, the ACC, and the Big Ten. I was going to post a video on this and also thought about going live talking about this in particular. I'm not completely understanding the power play or the advantage in forming some kind of an alliance that just has to do with scheduling. If it has to do with merging, then that's a whole other deal. But just to say, unless they're going to shut out the SEC and say, we are not playing you non-conference, we'll show up at the playoff and play you then, but we're going to shut you out of non-conference play, and we're going to play each other. They may do that. We're talking about 40 teams. So if we're just simply talking about an alliance, we're talking about cooperation and a scheduling format that they build, but we're talking about the Pac-12 is still the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, the ACC. None of those conferences want to give up their identity and become just merged into another conference, because they're going to have to be submissive to the other conference. Somebody's going to take the name and the branding over, or I don't think that they want to lose their history and tradition and branding and just say we're gonna form some huge conference and call it the national conference. So this is nothing more than a scheduling ploy that could create some type of advantages. I would think there's only so many non-conference games. There's only 3 in 2 of those 3 leagues. And so if they went to a uniform 9-game conference season, then they would go to a 3 non-conference games, and then they would still want to play a lesser team to give their teams a break. So you're talking about only, and you're talking about 40 teams. I think the only advantage in this that I can see really playing out is either they are going to tear things up and form new conferences, but I just don't see that for all the reasons I just cited. So it's a scheduling, and when you've got 40 teams involved, I guess they're just going to play each other. Their 2 difficult non-conference games are going to be against each other. They're only going to play each other. And that is going to force that is going to mean that the SEC has no non-conference games to play. That could be it. Because why form an alliance that's not going to impact scheduling to that degree? And if you've got 40 teams to deal with, then you've only got 2 non-conference game slots for those teams, again, aside from the FCS/Group of 5 game that they'll play. So I would think that this move is going to be, we are shutting out the SEC and we're only playing in non-conference games against each other, and we'll see the SEC in the playoff. Those are my thoughts. You also have A&M. Kier is telling us that Georgia has not finished undefeated in the SEC since 1982. A loss to Clemson effectively puts them out. Okay. This is a new season. It's 2021. Therefore, what happened in the past, what happened in 1983 does not affect 2021 at all. Iowa State's been winning 2 and 3 football games a season forever. They will win more than that this season. We have different teams playing a different sport, just playing different. The circumstances are different. I understand you can look at the previous few seasons and say that's a Kirby Smart team with a similar coaching staff and similar personnel, and say, okay, that's the program. 2016 on, I will take your evaluations of Georgia football from 2016 on. The rest is ancient history. Michigan is not going to contend for the Big Ten championship because they did basically every year from 1968 until 2007. That doesn't mean they're going to contend for a Big Ten championship this year, because they did for 40 years in a row. Joey, appreciate you smashing the like button. Everybody do that. Hit the like button. And also keep in mind that we've got these tremendous post-game shows coming your way on all the team channels. On just about all the team channels. Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Oregon, Florida, Texas A&M, Miami, Florida State, LSU. Post-game shows right here at the Voice of College Football on those team-specific channels. Post-game shows. Lock it in. We will announce our schedule each and every week. Near the end of each week, a Thursday or Friday, we'll announce a schedule and say, these are the post-game shows and these are the approximate times. Of course, they're going to be after the game, so the approximate times of those post-game shows. Also, who's going to be with me on this 24-hour live stream? Let me find it. Let me find it. Let me find it. Bingo. 24 consecutive live hours right here at the Voice of College Football. 24 consecutive live hours. I am going to take a nap. No, you're not going to watch me take a nap. I'll take a nap, though. Probably as of as recent as 5 years ago, I would have attempted to do it 24 consecutive hours myself. I've gained just that much wisdom since then. So I will be asking folks to fill in, but we will be here with you 24 consecutive hours talking college football. And that span of time will be, my estimation is that because we've got Thursday night games, September 2nd, Thursday night games, and we'll want to do post, talk about all the games, talk about that weekend's games, Friday and Saturday games, generally takes us to about 2 in the morning. So we will start our 24-hour live stream the previous 2 a.m. Wednesday night, Thursday morning, 2 a.m. Eastern. That starts the live stream. Hopefully I can sleep, which is very doubtful, before that. Get up, start rocking at 2 a.m. Wednesday night, Thursday morning, throughout the day, watch the ball games with you, do post, and crash. 24-hour live stream, be here, technically September 2nd at 2 a.m. through 2 a.m. on the 3rd. And these post-game shows, once again, if you're an Ohio State fan, Ohio State post-game. Michigan fan, Michigan post-game. Notre Dame, Florida, Texas A&M, LSU, Miami, Florida State, Oklahoma, post-game. Nebraska, post-game. Just go to those specific team channels, subscribe, and make sure the bell for the notifications is on. The Wholesome One gave us a rundown on how the notification should be handled. I can't necessarily repeat that, how he stated that. Something about you've got 3 different options that you can shut off the notifications, you can get all the notifications, or you can get something in between. So just make sure that the notifications are on for the setting that you want to remind you that we've got post-game shows. Saturdays here is going to be crazy. Did I forget Iowa? Iowa post-game. Check out the ticker down below. If you would like to bypass YouTube and the Super Chat, you can contribute to the Voice of College Football on the Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App. More predictions coming. I've got to get my work in to get these predictions out there very soon. We released a number this weekend. We've got more to do. I'm going to have to start knocking out about 5 per day. I've got all the predictions done. I've just got to produce the videos. I've got to start to get those posted, and then conference championship game picks and your playoffs. One more time, I picked Alabama to beat Ohio State in the national championship game last year, before the season. And also, let's all keep in mind, this is a huge announcement right here. Join us on Patreon. We will have media predictions. Some of your favorite media analysts, college football analysts that we have on here on a regular basis will be providing their top 25 and even more beyond that predictions each week. You've got predictions from me. We've got Steve Days, Steve Hellwagon, Kevin Noon, Tony Gerdeman, Mike McDaniel, Paul Van Wagner, the Wholesome One, Jason Parker, Lon Phillips Sullivan, Jason Ray, Tony Siracusa, Kevin McGuffey, and more will be providing their top 25. Again, the games, weekly games, pick them against the spread, straight up and against the spread. Join us on Patreon. I thought my picks were worth $5 a month. That's what I thought, but apparently not. So added bonus this year and hopefully beyond. We will have Steve Merrill each week from Wager Talk and Pro Sports Info to deliver his lock of the week. You get my predictions. You get the predictions of all the people I just mentioned and others whom I'm forgetting. And, of course, you get the insider look, and you get the one exclusive live stream per week, per request. Per request, one exclusive live stream per week. So join us there on Patreon. I would like to be doing this same thing next year. I would like to be here. I would love to have the voice of college football up and running and humming full throttle. So this is a venture that we took on with your help, and we hope to deliver. Don't want to shut this thing down. All right. We do have a call coming in here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is Sam. How are you?
Hey, Sam. What's going on?
Hey, I just wanted to kind of amplify something I said on the chat, which is to see this year become a total chaos year like 2007.
Yeah.
We had teams coming out of nowhere. We had top 5 teams shifting all over the place, middle and late in the season. Here's my question to you, Mark. What if Bama is not Bama this year? Let's say Bama has one of those rare down years. How does that change the landscape of college football this year, you think?
So if everything else runs true to form, then we know who our 4 playoff teams are. So it's not going to change much. We've got 5 dominant programs. And so we've got 4 playoff spots. So you're saying Alabama goes 10-2. So they're out of the playoffs.
Right. They slip up. They don't look that great against Miami, which is a harbinger of a couple of losses in the SEC. So they 10-2.
Then if everything else holds to form, then you've got Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, and Oklahoma in the playoff. That's how it's going to look.
Well, I think Oklahoma is going to be true to form this year. I have no doubt about that. And I think Ohio State will do the same. But let's say Clemson stumbles. Let's say they do a Clemson of the old years. If we take Clemson and Bama out of the picture, who goes in there?
Who's going to make the playoff, in my estimation, if Clemson and Alabama stumble? Well, I have not revealed my playoff predictions, but most likely, again, if we go back to the chalk, then it's Ohio State and Oklahoma. It's Georgia. And then it's either going to be if there's a dominant Pac-12 champion. And when I say dominant, I mean a team that emerges with a undefeated record or a 1-loss record. And then whoever steps up and beats Clemson in the ACC championship game, most likely Carolina.
So you think that a surprise ACC team that can beat Clemson would be more likely than a 2-loss Pac-10 team or a Pac-12 team?
Well, I think it's more likely that if Clemson stumbles, then I believe that North Carolina is the most capable team to beat them. And I believe that so you're conceding that Clemson is not the ACC champion. So there has to be another ACC champion. So I'm about 75 to 80% sure that would be North Carolina. And they've got a hurdle against Miami. They've got one against Notre Dame. And we've already given them the ACC championship. So as long as they only have 1 loss, then they're going to be in the playoff. And if the way things stand right now, based on the respect factor that's given to all those conferences by the selection committee, I believe that the Pac-12 champion is going to have to be 1 game better than any team that they're competing against for that fourth spot. So if, for example, Oklahoma's 12-1 and Oregon's 12-1, that Oklahoma's 12-1 is going to be considered better than Oregon's 12-1. Now, the one exception to that would be is if Oregon goes out and beats Ohio State in Columbus. Now, that could gain some steam for the Pac-12. That could flip the scales. That could flip the perception. In my estimation, a lot of other games could flip the perception for me about the conference, but that's going to be the one that's going to be tied to playoff implications. Oregon, Ohio State. So if the Ducks go to Columbus, beat Ohio State, and Ohio State is a typical Ohio State season otherwise, then Oregon's going to be given a lot of credit for that win, as they should be. And that would be the one exception to what I just stated. But otherwise, the Pac-12 champion will need to have a one-game lead on anybody that they're competing against for that fourth spot.
Well, let me just end the call with this, Mark. And I think you're one of the greats to support college football and promote college football. I'm so glad I found your channel.
Thank you.
But let me end with this. Yeah. I think that Oregon's going to have a close loss against Ohio State, but LSU is overrated. They're going to go down against the Bruins. Huskies are going to beat Michigan in Ann Arbor. And I think the Pac-12 is going to get a little bit of respect back this year. So I'll just end with that. Thank you for taking my call, Mark.
Thank you, Sam. Appreciate that. Have a good day. So in regards to what Sam said about earning back respect, most of the Pac-12's issues are self-inflicted. They've lost big games. They've lost on the national stage most of the time in the last 5 years. But it's overplayed. It's over-exaggerated. And based on what Sam said, I think that the smart college football fan will look at the games down the rung. They will look at the fourth and fifth place teams in the Pac-12 and see how they're performing outside the conference. So some of those games like Oregon State and Purdue, Stanford and Kansas State, those games will matter to Pac-12 perception by the smart college football fan. By the lazy college football fan or the ignorant college football fan. And I don't know about the committee. I don't exactly know where to place them. I respect their intelligence, but I think they're very front-loaded, top-loaded, heavy to the top of determining and evaluating just that Oregon game at Ohio State is going to mean volumes in their eyes. And I don't know necessarily that they're going to evaluate the Pac-12 from top to bottom as stringently as they should. And I believe I failed to get the number to the bottom of the screen on the ticker there, but just keep in mind Venmo, PayPal, and Cash App contribute to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football there, as well as the Super Chat. There we go. So Lewis is letting us know how large these stadiums are. Okay, let's keep in mind that there's a pretty substantial difference between the stadium capacity officially versus how many people go to the games. So Michigan, for example, that is the official capacity for Michigan Stadium, 107,601. However, Michigan puts in over 112,000 in the stadium. Those are the announced crowds. 112 etc. At Ohio State, I saw that Lewis posted 102,000 plus at Ohio Stadium. The announced crowds now in Columbus, or I think the number's 111 and change. I don't know about Penn State. It says 106 and change there. I believe they're more in the 107 or 108 range. Why that doesn't add up? They count everybody in the house, media, everybody. Well, there's not 5,000 media, but however they arrive at those numbers, I think that they should pull it together and make it accurate as possible to match the capacity of the stadium versus the attendance of the games. So the attendance of the game should not be surpassing capacity unless they should even take into account standing room only, because they only allow so many tickets to be sold, even if you're going to stand. So why would the full capacity of these stadiums be constantly surpassed? And I'm talking about at the largest stadiums. Of course, at Rice, their capacity might be 32,000 and they always have 12,000. So we never see that elsewhere, but at those stadiums, we see it. Chris is letting us know, and I've seen this as well. Washington has the highest decibel record in recorded history in college football. I have seen that. We will be posting a video a little bit later today, I believe at 3 o'clock. Maybe you just posted. Maybe you posted at noon here at the Voice of College Football, running down Georgia's situation in fall camp. Palmer Toms from Dogs 247 Sports joined us, and he had a great rundown. I told him afterward, that was phenomenal. He ran down position battles and exactly what's going on. I'm not talking about position battles with information from the offseason. I'm talking about like now, day-to-day practice stuff, injuries, a lot of issues, top 3 wide receivers out of commission as we stand right now at Georgia. So check out that video with Palmer Toms. He did an exceptional job running down Georgia personnel. McD Sports 4, they, meaning the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, I guess, already have kind of a merger with how they schedule non-conference games. I guess if you would look at the teams in the Big Ten, I guess they play the Pac-12 a little bit more than other conferences, but not much. Ohio State's playing Oregon. They were supposed to play them last year. They played USC about 10 years ago. They played Washington a long time ago. 2007 was the last time they played Washington. They haven't played Washington State since 2002. They played Oregon State a couple years ago. They haven't played Stanford in forever, 82. They haven't played Cal. They played Cal when Urban Meyer was first there in 12 and 13. Arizona State, they haven't played in forever since for a scheduled regular season game since Earl Bruce's years. Arizona, they haven't played since John Cooper. They've never played Utah. USC, UCLA, the last time they played the Buckeyes was early in Jim Tressel's. But so if you would go year to year in regards to, let's start with Ohio State at the top of the Big Ten. They haven't played Pac-12 teams more than anybody else. They're big non-conference games. Oregon right now. Before that, it was Oklahoma in 16 and 17. Who did they play in 18? Don't know that they played anybody big outside the conference in 18. Then they played Cincinnati. Before Oklahoma, it was Virginia Tech in 14 and 15. It was Cal in 12 and 13. It was Miami in 10 and 11. It was USC in 08 and 09. It was Washington in 07. It was Texas in 05 and 06. It was North Carolina State before that. It was Washington before that. Washington State. Going way back. We're going back to Jim Tressel's first couple of years, UCLA. Miami in the Kickoff Classic in 99. We did the same thing with Michigan. Who have they played non-conference recently? Well, they played Florida a couple of years ago. They're playing Washington now. They were supposed to play Washington last year. They played Florida before that. Michigan hasn't played Oregon in about 15 years. Who else has Michigan played? Trying to come up with their non-conference games recently. Alabama in 12. Notre Dame obviously was one of their key ones, so they didn't play anybody else big, a Power 5, other than Notre Dame a lot of those years. Michigan State, a lot of Notre Dame, of course, before the ACC kicked in, and Michigan State plays Miami right now. Has Michigan State played the Pac-12 much? They played Oregon home and home in 14 and 15 or 13 and 14. They haven't played Washington State, Oregon State, Michigan State hasn't played Cal or Stanford, USC or UCLA. They played Arizona State in 18 and 19. No Arizona, no Utah. Michigan played Utah a couple times here recently at the beginning of Jim Harbaugh's tenure. They went to Utah, his first game ever. That game was signed when Utah wasn't even in the Pac-12 because they played the first game in Ann Arbor in 08 or 09. Wisconsin, who have they played in the Pac-12? They went out to Arizona State. They played a home and home with Arizona State about 5 years ago. They haven't played USC or UCLA. They haven't played Washington or Washington State or Oregon State. Stanford, Cal, nobody really else for Wisconsin to have played. Iowa, they went out to Arizona a few years ago. They haven't played Washington or Washington State. They, of course, always play Iowa State, so they rarely play an out-of-conference game against anybody else in the Power 5. So, yeah, I'm not really seeing where the Big Ten plays that many games against the Pac-12, more so than the other conferences. They don't play much against the SEC. The SEC doesn't travel. The SEC, in the games that have been scheduled for the next 10 to 15 years, they're starting to travel. We're seeing LSU go to UCLA this year. We're seeing Auburn go to Penn State. But Alabama hasn't gone anywhere since 2011. Florida never goes anywhere. Florida has not played a non-conference game outside the state of Florida since 1991 at Syracuse. Auburn, where does Auburn go? They went to Kansas State a few years ago. Other than that, where's Auburn gone? They haven't gone. They went out to USC like 15 years ago. They haven't gone anywhere. They've gone to Clemson. Arkansas is playing Texas, of course, in a home and home. Where's Arkansas gone? They went to USC like 10 or 15 years ago. Tennessee had a home and home with Oregon fairly recently in the last 10 years. When the Big Ten and the SEC have gotten together non-conference, it's typically been a neutral site. It's been LSU and Wisconsin, neutral site games. Michigan, Alabama, neutral site. Oh, got some calls. My bad. Let's get to it. Welcome in. You're here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Mark, it's Reasonable Gumps here, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well. What's going on?
Oh, nothing. I'm just listening. You go on your little tirade against the SEC. I was kind of laughing a little bit.
Well, once they start to travel, and they've scheduled those games to start to travel, so I will applaud them. No, I won't applaud them. I'll just say you're finally traveling. They don't travel.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody travels in the SEC.
So when Alabama goes to play like USC and Dallas or something, you don't consider getting on planes, packing up bags, getting hotel room. You don't consider that traveling.
It's a neutral site game. They don't go to anybody's stadiums. You don't see that in any other conference.
Okay, so you say home and home. Okay. I guess our definition of traveling is different. I thought traveling was leaving.
I mean, they don't go anywhere to play in a hostile environment. They don't. Hardly anybody does in the SEC. As I mentioned, Florida has not left the state of Florida for a non-conference game in 30 years.
Georgia did it at home and home with Notre Dame. You know, that's not traveling.
Okay. Wow. Every other team, and I bash a lot of schedules out there outside of the SEC. Baylor comes to mind. But basically everybody, and when I say everybody, I'll go with over 90% of the teams in the other four conferences, they travel all over the place. Ohio State goes to Oregon. They'll go to Oregon and play. They'll go to Washington and play. They'll go to Oklahoma and play. They go all over the place and play games. You can go to Penn State will go all over the place and play.
So what, I guess, where is this kind of going? But by the way, Mark, I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying. I'm just kind of being devil's advocate here. Well, what do you want, like, from this? Like, what would SEC teams doing home and homes with other conferences, like, what is that going to prove that is not already proven?
Well, it will. Okay, first of all, it's the best conference in the country, if that's what you want me to say. It is. I say that probably.
No, that's not really what I want you to say. I'm just curious as to, like, what is this going to make college football better, in your opinion? That instead of one neutral site games every year, because Alabama usually plays a big name every year, neutral sites. Like, how is college football going to be better instead of playing USC this year, Texas this year, Ohio State that year, or Michigan, whatever, Penn State? You know, instead of doing those that we have to wait 2 years in between the next team we play, because now we got home and homes. Like, how is that a superior college football?
Well, first of all, college football. So if we took your format and defense of these games and we just played neutral site games, you don't think that would take away from college football?
Not when it's one game out of 12. Absolutely not.
No, I said if you want to continue doing what you're proposing here and play neutral site games, if we played nothing but neutral site games, you don't think that would take away from college football, just playing neutral site games?
Well, I don't think I mean, I could try and go back and listen to the video, but I don't believe I proposed that here, now, in the past, anywhere, ever.
Yes.
So I'm not sure where you're getting that proposal.
Okay, well, let's get at this. If everyone in every other conference took on the same approach as, again, it's not everybody in the SEC. Ole Miss has gone to Texas. I can cite some outliers. But if every other conference, if every other...
Didn't Texas A&M do a home and home with UCLA?
Yeah. Anyway,
there you go.
If every other conference took the same approach as the SEC teams generally do, then we would have a bunch of neutral site non-conference games.
Right. So let's look at that. Every year, presumably, we're going to keep 12 games a year. and maybe the first 2 weeks, so it's not all bundled into one Saturday. In fact, maybe even the first 3 weeks. The out of conference weeks of college football, and every Saturday we've got big name matchups. Maybe there are ones in Dallas. There's one over here. Maybe they do one in the Rose Bowl. Maybe they do it at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Maybe they do one in the Orange Bowl. I don't know. Or maybe in the Silver Dome. Actually give something people in Detroit something to watch. But and you do that for the first 3 weeks of college football. You got names like Michigan playing LSU. You got Georgia playing USC. I'm intentionally trying to think of teams that never play right now to make it exciting. Oh, everyone wanted to see Oregon and Alabama for some reason. 2012. Let's make that a game. Let's have them play in Dallas. Okay. Is that not fun to you? I don't understand why this is so bad.
If we've got a few of them, but when it takes over 10 years for Alabama to travel somewhere to play, that's a bit ridiculous. And
I guess I'm wondering what is more appealing. Like, let's say, let's compare. Let's put these side by side. Let's say if Alabama has a home and home schedule with Ohio State, for some reason they want to do that 11 years out or whatever. They have that. Let's put that on one hand, and then let's hold in the other hand. Or let's say, instead of doing that, why don't you guys go play in the Rose Bowl for 1 year? Like, why is in your opinion the home and home more attractive to you?
Okay, wherever Ohio State and Alabama want to play is fine by me. It should be great. It should be a game that's played occasionally. Okay, so let's get that out of the way. You've got exceptional programs playing. It's going to be a better spectacle and just better football players on the field than Baylor playing Purdue, a home and home.
Okay.
Yes. There is something that supersedes the location of the game. What I'm saying is, do you think people would be a little bit more interested, though, or it would be an more interesting setting, more fascinating, more exciting to see Alabama go into Columbus and play and Ohio State venture into Bryant-Denny Stadium and play, rather than playing in some NFL stadium far, far away from both of their campuses?
Mark, if you asked me that question 10 or 20 years ago, my answer would be unequivocally yes. But college football and pretty really all sports has just gone to such the at-home viewing experience is just on almost every way superior to going to the stadium, that I think having a big spectacle of a game like Alabama and Florida State did in 2017, how hyped up that was, how big a giant, just like big show, they put on for that game. I don't see that as being an inferior product to the consumer, which is us fans, as a home and home. It's Alabama going to Columbus and Ohio State coming to Tuscaloosa. While that sounds cool, and it is cool, I'm not saying those games wouldn't be the most watched games of those weeks. Of course they would. I just don't necessarily see it as being this unequivocally superior product than a neutral site games are.
I'm not talking about the
I don't understand
field.
why there's just a need to just bash neutral site games like this.
Because they're generic, for one thing. And I'm not talking about the product on the field. They're still the 22 players colliding into each other on the field. So once they start playing the game, it's the same product on the field. It's still, in this case, the two greatest football programs in the country playing each other. Okay. But college football games were not meant to be played in NFL stadiums on a regular basis. And when a particular program meets these so-called big teams, which again, let's understand, in amongst the Wisconsins and USCs and Michigans has been Duke, Louisville, West Virginia. So for me to watch Alabama and Duke play in Atlanta, especially, it even magnifies the absurdity of that game. Not that Alabama shouldn't sign a contract to play Duke, but we've grown accustomed to these neutral site games as being spectacles of Alabama and Florida State are playing. Alabama's playing UCL or USC. those type of games, not Alabama and Duke are playing, just sign a home and home series and play Alabama and Duke. And I would not bash Alabama playing Duke, Ohio State, and other
I would.
schools go out there.
I would be bashing that until the cows come home. Alabama does not belong on the same field as Duke ever.
Well, they play New Mexico State and they play the College of Charleston. So if that's their biggest game of the year, non-conference, yes, then I'm going to bash them. But if they just want to add Duke, they want to do what USC does. They play, USC plays like 3 games like that. They'll play Notre Dame, and then they'll schedule BYU and San Jose State, who won the Mountain West last year. That's USC's 3 games this year out of conference. It's pretty respectable.
Yeah, I guess still. Although I think we're focusing a little bit too much on the Duke example. Before that, Alabama had a string of big time brands that they were playing, but I know you always never give them credit for that. But anyway,
I did give them credit for that. Well,
how much
credit should I give them? Everybody in college football should be playing difficult non-conference games, and Alabama playing Wisconsin, Michigan, USC, Florida State. I'll give them those. It was Clemson before Dabo, way back when. Virginia Tech.
West Virginia was pretty good when they played.
Pretty good. Yeah, see, you had to go there. I was going to bring up in the other column, you've got Duke, Louisville when they were awful, West Virginia. I don't think those are really...
We're supposed to have USC again last year, but Pac-12 bailed out.
I'm not bashing Alabama necessarily for that. I can go to the next slot and say Ohio State. They haven't scheduled one of the 10 best programs in the country every year. They've had their years where it's Cincinnati, it's Cal. Okay, but they actually played them on a campus somewhere. And again, I don't mind this once in a while, but for over a decade, Alabama could never travel anywhere. I still
haven't heard a good reason of why. So you inserted that little comment right there, but at least they played them on a campus somewhere. I haven't heard if I'm sitting in an Alabama's office, in a media market office, or whatever it is, whoever makes these schedules. I still have not heard a reason of why I should care about that and why that is superior. Why did you get more points for that?
Let's play them all in NFL stadiums. Your example was they go
and
out
then you go to an extreme.
Well,
then you go to an extreme like that, which I never said.
Well, your example,
your argument is to go to an extreme. We're talking one game a year, and you want to say, okay, 12 games.
Your example, but if everybody took that Alabama approach, it would be every non-conference game, every big non-conference game.
Well, that's not Alabama's approach. So no, that's not true. Alabama's never done every non-conference game neutral site. Never happened.
Every big non-conference game since they went to Penn State 10 years ago. It's been 10 years since Alabama's gone anywhere to play. Yes, if everybody took that approach,
every big non-conference
then we would have every non-conference
game. Non-conference game.
Yes, in an NFL stadium. We would have them all there. If everybody
and
took
then we go
Alabama's
back
approach.
To the situation that I described in the very beginning of this, which was the first 3 or 4 weeks college football. We start having those every Saturday. And I have yet to find, no one has told me why I should be sad about that. I think it would be fun. It would be awesome.
They can play on campus. Play most of them on campus.
But just tell me why I should be more excited about the campus, Mark. I don't understand. I'm pulling teeth here. Why is that better?
Then play them all off campus. We can be excited
Mark,
about every college.
You're not telling me a reason why. You're just okay. Well, just don't do any. Mark, I want you to tell me a reason. I'm trying to understand. Tell me a reason why the campus. Why I should love that more. That's all I'm asking.
College football games should be generally played on campus. Most of them, almost every one of them, should be played on campus. 90% should be played on campus. I didn't say I was against every non-conference game being played at a neutral site. I thought Wisconsin and LSU playing at Lambeau Field was kind of a cool thing. But Wisconsin doesn't schedule a neutral site game every year. They travel and play on other teams' campuses. And your example,
that's not a physical, that's not an emotional, that's not a thing that I could that gives me that and drives me to give more points to that. You're just saying, well, it should happen this way. That's still not a reason why that's more appealing. I'm looking for a reason of why. Okay, how about this? Why do you think it should happen that way?
Just because
what's the reason? Why should it happen like that?
Just because it's not appealing to you doesn't mean we couldn't poll College Football Nation and say, do you want to see Alabama? And first of all, your example of Alabama and Ohio State playing in the Rose Bowl is not a valid one, because these neutral site games are never played at the Rose Bowl. There's never been one played at the Rose Bowl. That is somebody's home field. They don't play at the Rose Bowl. They play in an NFL stadium. That's where they play all the games.
Okay, okay, fine. I don't watch NFL, so I can't think of their sayings, but I wasn't specifically using the Rose Bowl as a foil. Like, I'm not sure why you're picking that apart.
Well, because I'm just distinguishing.
What's an NFL stadium then? The Bengals stadium. I don't know. I don't watch NFL. I just pulled the Rose Bowl out because it's a big historic location, even though the stadium sucks. I've been there. So I'm not really sure why you're picking that apart.
Well, they don't play at big historic locations. They play in Houston, in Atlanta, in Dallas. Luxury
is
palaces.
A giant, big location.
And there are money reasons for that. And I understand that. I'm just saying I don't like it not for a particular program. In this case, it's Alabama, to say for over a decade, we're going to play every big non-conference game in an NFL stadium and never travel to anybody's campus. I'm just saying I don't like it. I don't say it's the law or it's a rule or it's right or wrong. I'm just saying I don't like it. I never said.
So you don't like it.
I never said there was like something morally wrong with it. I just said I don't like it. I would rather see Alabama and USC play at the Coliseum or play in Tuscaloosa most of the time. I didn't say that they could never play in Atlanta or Houston in an NFL stadium. I never said that. But they've been doing it for over 10 years consecutively.
Okay, so it really just comes down to there is no physical or some sort of reason that makes it superior other than that you just feel that college games should be mostly on college campuses. That's what it comes down to. You just feel that.
I would think that most people that are watching us right now would think that most college football games should be played on college campuses.
Now, I'm not, my head isn't a calculator or anything, but 11 out of 12 games, I think, is over 90%.
Again, but when you
qualifies most.
When you only play one significant non-conference opponent every year, and every year for over a decade, you never go to a college campus to play them. They are forced to play the conference games on campus by the league.
Wasn't always like that either. We used to play Auburn at Legion Field. But anyway, I think 11 out of 12 games satisfies most games being played on campus, and I don't understand why 1 out of 12 games we can't go do this big kind of spectacle thing and have fun with it. And let's be honest, make a lot of money with it. I don't understand why that has to just grind people like you, like grind your gears so much. Because it's not like Michigan didn't agree to it. Wisconsin agreed to play there. Florida State agreed. They all agree to these neutral site games. Alabama isn't forcing teams to come to their house, but then not reciprocating that. Both teams are agreeing to these neutral site games. Why does it have to piss anyone off? Why can't we just have fun with it and watch it?
All of the other teams that you just mentioned travel to other campuses and play non-conference games. And Alabama is supposedly going to do this in the future. So bravo to them. I applaud them for breaking out of this 10 or 12 year rut that they've had. And they're going to start traveling. When is it? I think maybe next year. Is it next year that they've got a on-campus game?
Yeah, home and home with Texas, I think.
Phenomenal. That's.
But you do realize that won't even satisfy your requirement of being road games in other conferences by that point, right? Because that'll be an SEC game by that point.
Well, yeah, at that point, it is going to be an SEC game. So they're going to, well, first of all, the schedule is going to have to be torn up in the SEC. They're going to have to remap the whole thing, whether it's divisions or pods, and then they'll have other slots for non-conference games. Or maybe will just be a situation where, like they've done in the ACC, where that's an additional SEC game, but it's not going to be counted as an SEC game because it was already scheduled. I wouldn't be surprised if they did that, and that would be fine. That's an unusual circumstance. I'm not going to go crazy. They had to tear up the schedules and add 2 teams. That's beyond anybody's control.
Let me just put this out here, and I know this will get torn up by probably everyone watching, but this is the point I'm about to make is fair here. Because I think your words exactly last year about Ohio State, where they would have to jump off a cliff to find the rest of the Big Ten. Yeah, you were on a phone call with me and you said that.
Okay. All right.
Alabama's about to pick up Texas, not Alabama. The SEC, we're talking about Alabama, so I said that on a Freudian slip. But the SEC is picking up Texas and Oklahoma. I don't know what the schedules are going to look like. If I find out that Alabama and Auburn are moving to the East, I'm going to be breaking stuff.
Oh,
but
that's my format.
If I'm sitting down here with Alabama and I have to play Texas A&M, now I got to look at maybe possible Texas or Oklahoma, maybe not every year, but one of them at least on a regular basis. I got Georgia, I got Florida, I got LSU. Not all these are every year, but a lot of them are. I was about to say another school, but yeah, right. Ole Miss is pretty dangerous. I'm kind of looking around. I'm like, why in the world am I going to make this even harder than it already is? Because the SEC is not their spot in the playoffs, particularly if they go to this 12 playoff system. Currently, the SEC's bid is worth the same as a Pac-12 champion's bid would be, or a Big Ten champion's bid would be. They don't get brownie points just for going through the ringer of an SEC schedule. So I'm sitting here looking around, and I'm like, why on earth are we going to go out of our way to make our lives even more difficult and our path even more difficult when it's already more difficult than any other conference? Clemson, they should be going out and scheduling Texas A&M like they did, and Auburn and all these, because those games, that particularly in those Texas A&M years, those were the only games that Clemson was realistically expected to be challenged. Yeah, they kind of snoozed and almost got popped by North Carolina that year, but no, let's come on, none of us predicted that. We all make fun of Clemson's schedule in the ACC because it's a sleepwalk. And we're not making fun of Clemson; we're just making fun of their schedule. But Clemson fans seem to have a hard time differentiating that. But the Pac-12, almost even worse. And like you said, Ohio State in the Big Ten. It's actually your boy Steve Dace has actually. I don't agree with this, by the way, but he has actually said that Ohio State's reign over the gap between them and the Big Ten is bigger than that of Clemson in the ACC. Okay, I don't agree with that, but that's just what he said on one of y'all's 10-minute war things. Where I'm going with this is, why on earth is it so important for the SEC teams to go out and make their lives harder when they're already harder than all these other than these other playoff brand schools?
Okay, do you want my answer to that?
That's why I asked you.
Okay, first of all, yes, the SEC is currently the best conference, and they've added 2 potentially top 10 teams. One is currently playing like it. Okay. So, of course, not everybody's going to see everyone. So people automatically say Oklahoma's going to have to face, and they list all the best teams in the SEC. Well, okay. they're going to play like 3/5 of those teams on a regular basis. Okay, so let's understand that you still get Vandy and Arkansas and Missouri and so forth. But it is going to be a daunting conference schedule for most teams. Okay, as long as the out-of-conference scheduling is still in the hands of the individual teams and programs, they can do whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. But if SEC teams are going to, you can't have it both ways. You can't cry about your conference schedule and then invite more really good programs in. You can't do both. You can't say, why do we have to play such a hard schedule? Texas, Oklahoma, Clemson, Florida State, we're talking to you too. Why don't you guys come into the league and then cry about how hard your schedule is in conference? You can't do both. And nobody's going to be forcing these SEC teams to play a tough out-of-conference games. They can do whatever they want. And I'm assured that the committee will make evaluations as they see fit. If a 3-team SEC team, they believe a 3-loss SEC team is better than a 1-loss Pac-12 team, then they'll jump them in the rankings and include them in the playoffs or give them a bye or what. They'll make those judgment calls. That's why they're there. Do I always agree with them? No, nobody does. But that's why they're there, is to make those evaluations that we're not just going to go through a pecking order of records. We're going to make evaluations on who the best teams are. And because the SEC schedules are going to be stacked, they're going to be given preference as, again, they should, I guess. Because if, yes, you're eyeballing it, evaluating it based on metrics and results. So I don't know what the problem is.
I guess the problem is why, what I'm really asking is why do we got, and by we, I mean everyone except SEC. Well, why do we have to keep complaining about the SEC's non-conference scheduling when their schedule is already hard enough to begin with? Like, why is it such a big deal?
Well, that's all we have to evaluate these conferences, is when they play out of conference opponents. And let's take this to an extreme. This is just going to be an extreme for an example, just to play on the conversation you've brought to the table. If the SEC says, if their teams just say, hey, this schedule's tough enough, we're just not going to play anybody outside the conference. We're going to play group of 5 teams and FCS teams, and that's going to be especially if they go to 9 games, that's going to be our 3 out-of-conference games, because this is a gauntlet. I understand that, but is that really what we're trying to accomplish here, is have teams? And then why wouldn't every other conference say, you know what? We know we'll get at least 1 team in the playoff and probably get 2 in. Why should we go out and schedule really good teams from other conferences either? Do we really not want? To be honest, do we really not? Just let me say one other thing. Do we really not want the SEC to participate in difficult non-conference games? Is that what we want in college football? For them to never see, and then we'll see the 3 teams show up for the 12-team playoff out of the SEC, and that's when they'll play their out-of-conference games, and we'll never see Mississippi State or Ole Miss or Tennessee ever play a difficult non-conference opponent ever.
Whether the answer what we want, if it's a yes or no, I think that's what you're about to get based off this expansion choice. Because you and I haven't really talked about it since it started happening. I tried to call in a few times, but it was always a busy time, which I guess means your show's doing good. That seems to be, though, what Greg Sankey and the SEC, as part of their thought process is that no, they must not care about that. They don't want to go out and beat Texas and Oklahoma and thereby beating the Big 12. They just wanted to assimilate the two and destroy the Big 12 that way. Because if they do go to 9, and like I said, Texas and Oklahoma are at least going to become a regular or semi-regular part of Georgia, Alabama's schedule, and I guess in this case Texas A&M, then I mean, it's hard to make an argument about why on earth would you go out and basically handicap yourself of trying to get into the playoffs now. Now, if they go into 12 teams, maybe this will get kind of remedied somewhat or kind of balanced out. But particularly when there's only 4 teams and we're already running through that gauntlet, I honestly think that's what you're going to get. I think you're going to get you'll see the deals with Alabama and Ohio State and Notre Dame. And the only reason I'm saying Alabama is because I don't know the other teams' future schedules very well, but you'll see those still happen. But yeah, I don't think you're going to see any SEC team that is a playoff or semi-playoff contender are going to go out of their way to schedule against other not tough non-conference teams in the regular schedule. And in the case of Georgia and Florida, they're going to look at you and say, well, we already have an annual non-conference opponent that's supposed to be, at least in Florida State's case, it's supposed to be good. It's not Florida's fault. But Florida State is, currently the bottom of the well. So I think as far as what I want, no, I hate this. I hate all of it. In fact, I wanted the SEC to trim some of the fat off of it so we could start playing every SEC team every year and still have room to go out and play other non-conference opponents. But I think that's what you're going to get in the future.
The only thing that's going to solve this, and this will be the last thing I'll say, and then you can, to finish it up, the only thing that's going to solve this, and I don't see this ever happening because all the conferences would have to align and would have to agree, is that, again, that a separate committee would take over non-conference scheduling, and that committee would be bound by very strong metrics that would make non-conference scheduling equitable. And then the SEC, I'm just speculating, would complain because they have the most difficult non-conference schedule or conference schedule. But that's, again, their creation for both being good, but also being, what word am I looking for? Being business-minded. I had something else on the tip of my tongue better than that. But anyway, and bringing in Texas A&M, Missouri, and now Oklahoma and Texas, but it's also the creation of just them building better football programs by and large. But then if you look at it as an entire system, I hate to do this. People will hate me for it. I'm going to bring up the NFL for a second. The NFL has an extremely strong division somewhere. They don't back off on the non-division games for those particular teams. Because they're too good and the division's too tough. Therefore, let's give them a lighter non-conference schedule, non-division schedule. So it's the same thing here. Is I believe that the non-conference schedule should be equitable across the board. But that's probably
as long as it
happen.
Yeah. No. I actually think what's going to happen in 10 or 20 years now is you're eventually going to get to some sort of a mimic of Major League Baseball where they have American League and the National League. I think you're going to end up with you're almost going to be able to draw a diagonal line from New York down to the southern tip of California or Arizona, more like, and everyone to the right, to the west, and the south of that line is what we may still call it the SEC. I don't know. And then which will consist of Texas and Oklahoma, the original SEC schools, and we'll probably end up gobbling up West Virginia, Clemson, and Florida State at some point. This whole contract thing, the ACC, a no exit contract they have until like 2030 something. That's it. Anyone who thinks stuff like that can hold up needs to, be in a padded room or something. The contracts are for suckers. Everyone knows that. And I think the Big Ten, you'll see a Big Ten, Pac-12 kind of semi, if not full-on merger, you'll see something similar. And neither side will play each other, because they got enough schools in their own side to deal with until the playoffs. I think that's what's eventually going to happen.
And that's what I said. I don't know if you heard me, but somebody asked me in the chat about what I thought about this, these conversations between the Big Ten, the Pac-12, and the ACC. And I said the same thing. I said, well, they're going to have 40 teams. Therefore, the only advantage to doing this would be shutting off scheduling and just scheduling non-conference games against themselves. That's the only advantage that I can see. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. Maybe somebody else can bring it up. But there you go. All right.
I don't think the yeah. All right, man. Yeah, that's all. I know you got other people.
Have a good one.
Thanks for talking with me.
You too. Bye-bye. It's always a spirited debate there with Reasonable Gump. I believe we've got Byers on the line next.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks for being patient.
Oh, man, I had to, sign up for an Ohio State online course because my IQ just dropped 10 points. Listen to that last caller. Oh, my God. It's terrible. Anyway, I had a question about Texas. But before I get to Texas, I just want to say Oregon does not have a chance to beat Ohio State this year. Ohio State's going to have top 3 offensive line, top 3 defensive line, best wide receivers in the country, best run game in the country, and the top defense in the country. Oregon has no chance. Wanted to put that to bed. So my question about Texas is zero chance.
Zero chance.
I will tattoo a duck on my right butt cheek if Oregon beats Ohio State, and it's just not going to happen. But anyway, my question with Texas is, years ago when they hired Tom Herman as head coach, a previous Ohio State offensive coordinator with the national championship, and that didn't work out too well for Tom Herman because, being an offensive coordinator and being head coach is 2 different things entirely. Why do you think Texas is taking that same path by hiring Steve Sarkisian from Alabama as the head coach? Why not just go with a head coach who's been a head coach?
Well, there's a big difference between, not a big difference. There is a difference between Tom Herman's experience going to Texas and Steve Sarkisian. Steve Sarkisian has run 2 major college football programs.
Okay. That's a pretty valid point. So Tom Herman, my only comparison with Tom Herman, he was considered an offensive genius at the time, and so was Steve Sarkisian. I just would have hoped Texas would have went with someone who was already a head coach, not someone the head coach went to an offensive coordinator. Now it's come back to a head coach.
So you're wanting to know why Texas hired Steve Sarkisian?
Well, I know why they hired him, but I'm just saying off of past experience hiring an offensive coordinator as a head coach, which I'm not saying is a bad move. I'm just saying it's Texas. I would have thought they wouldn't have went back to an offensive coordinator. That was my confusion. I'm not saying it's a bad move, but I would have thought they would have went with someone who, as of now, was a head coach, someone more proven.
Well, I will say that I don't really completely understand the love affair that some of these programs have with hiring the latest kind of guru on either side of the ball, and it's been offense centric over the last several years, just because it seems like the better head coaches in college football obviously are brainiacs when it comes to the game of football, but they've proven to be able to run a program, to be able to scheme an offense and run an offense and implement your theories and your ideas and be master tacticians is one thing, as you just stated, versus being able to be a CEO that's in charge of dozens of staff, 105 players, all the money considerations, not that they budget. I'm not saying that, but all the personalities involved. I would side more with the guy that has proven to be, and Urban Meyer comes to mind just because of his strengths, not necessarily being as a tactician, even though he helped develop the spread offense at Utah. He was one of the somewhat forerunners of it. But the guys that have been successful, like Saban and Urban Meyer, Pete Carroll, those guys, of course, they coached football their whole lives. They know the game on the field, but their resume was built more on leading organizations and leading people and figuring things out and handling difficult situations and all of that, and not because they could draw up an offense better than anybody. Go hire an offensive coordinator to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you also, do you believe that it's going to be a recruiting struggle for Steve at Texas, seeing as how a lot of high school players actually leave Texas, like Quinn Ewers, for example, to go play outside of the state of Texas to compete?
No, not unless he botches it. I think he's going to be aided, just like Texas A&M was, by entry into the SEC.
Okay. All right, well, that's all I got for you. I want to make it quick. I know you other callers wanted to call in, but I just kind of wanted to ask that question, see what you thought.
Thanks, Byers. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you.
All right. Next up here on the Voice of College Football, who's on the line? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah. What's up?
Hey, this is Jason R. Can you hear me better now?
I can. What's going on today?
Okay. So I wanted to call and make a few points to not the last caller, but the caller before, who just didn't understand your reasoning as to why the SEC should play games, big non-conference games at home and home. Well, I brought up some points that I wanted to bring up that I know that for a fact, when a few years back when Wisconsin played Alabama in Jerry's World in Dallas, Wisconsin actually wanted to do a home and a neutral site, but Alabama did not. So Wisconsin took what they could and went ahead and did a neutral site location. And secondly, it manipulates the scheduling of college football, especially like when you see Alabama play Murray State the week before. I mean, we're talking late in the season here now, right before they're going to play Auburn in the Iron Bowl. I mean, come on. That's ridiculous. And if they're that good, which I'm not saying if they're not, the SEC is the best conference, but what are they so scared of going on to a Wisconsin campus or Michigan State or going out west to play the Oregon Ducks at home? You know, what are they afraid of? Obviously, they're afraid of losing and having that blemish and then not being able to compete for the playoff spot. And I just don't like it. That's the reasoning I don't like it. I mean, other people might have different aspects on it, but that's what I don't like it. I don't like it because it manipulates college football. Now, I'm not saying that from time to time you can't do a big game at one of those big venues. But I just don't like to see every single game at one of those big venues, especially for the big non-conference games. I would like to see them played on campus with student atmosphere there and see, like, hey, if that team can go over there and beat that team that's really tough on the road in a non-conference game, that shows me how good that team actually is. And finally, I'm not trying to pick on the guy, but he doesn't sound like he knows a whole lot because he mentioned the Silver Dome, and the Silver Dome's been long demolished.
Well,
It's about like
he
2000,
doesn't follow the
2011.
NFL.
So, just I wanted to put my thoughts in there, and I'll let you comment to my thoughts because I want to get some of the other callers in and see what they have to say. Thank you for taking my call today, Mark.
I appreciate it, Jason. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So I will say this, that I personally don't have an issue with Alabama playing Mercer and Auburn playing Tennessee Chattanooga the week before they play the Iron Bowl. I have no issue with that as long as both are. And based on my review of schedule after schedule after schedule and looking through that and just keeping that in mind, I don't believe that that's, maybe it has been violated once. And that just doesn't go for Alabama, Auburn. That goes for other rivalries within the SEC, where Georgia's going to play Georgia Tech the next week. Florida's going to play Florida State. So it seems to me, based on everything I've looked out for through the years, that the SEC has always been consistent to make sure that they're not favoring one team over another, that they are both, this case in point, Alabama and Auburn are both playing FCS schools the week before. I know a lot of people don't like that. I wouldn't think that the SEC would do it to the degree that they currently do it, because they kind of take themselves, not that it hurts their brand much, but they take themselves off the map for a week. And they may have a couple of conference games, and they're usually Missouri and Kentucky and Mississippi State and Arkansas. There's like 2 or 3 of them. But everybody else kind of goes into their shell and plays their scrimmage game before their big rivalry game. And I wouldn't think that they would want to take themselves off the map for a full weekend in late November. But again, it doesn't hurt the conference. They make plenty of money, and they are at the center of college football. So I don't have a huge issue with it, as long as it's just a displaced FCS game that would have been played in September for other conferences, just so it's not an additional one, just so we're not seeing a major team in the SEC, or really anybody in the SEC, play one decent opponent, one group of 5, and then 2 FCS games. Once these teams start playing 2 FCS games, that gets to be a bit much. Baylor. All right. Kansas State. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello, it's me, Roberto.
Hey, Roberto. What's up?
Well, somebody already beat me about the phone call about that call about Alabama wanting to do road home to home. But I think like home to home is a big difference than neutral sites, because all they do is like head to either MetLife Stadium, NRG Stadium, or the Atlanta Dome, and they don't have as much capacity compared to like the 100K stadiums in Alabama, Ohio State, Texas, all that. Well, some of them could be like 50-50 with probably no tailgating, versus like majority Ohio State, Steve Red, and the majority of Princeton in both their home stadiums with tailgating in a much harder hostile environment.
Yeah, again, I don't mind some neutral site games, but if everybody took Alabama's approach and played all neutral site games, then we would have no non-conference games played on campus. And that would be a shame, and that would be awful. It would be generic. And it kept being brought up in the phone call about conference games. Well, if we had conference games and we took the same approach to that, then can you imagine Auburn playing at LSU? That would be the regularly scheduled game. Auburn at LSU in Death Valley with that atmosphere and what we've seen all through the years with Auburn and LSU playing great games and great matchups. But now we're going to play it in Kansas City. We're going to play Auburn and LSU, and they're going to go play in an NFL stadium in Kansas City. Okay. It's not the end of the world, but it's not what college football is about.
Yeah. Like LSU is that Valley is a very like rough environment to play in.
Sure.
At least like LSU played West Virginia in 2011. It was a game. And I think the other examples would be like Auburn at Kansas State in 2014, but then that's still kind of the
I brought that one
South
up.
area.
That was the only game I could come up with. Auburn leaving the South until this year. For a long time, they went to USC like 15 years ago or longer.
And they played Clemson home, but again, still the South. They never played anyone in the North like Penn. Well, they're about to play Penn State. We're not even like BYU. They play not even BYU and was it Provo, Utah, or Utah and Salt Lake City, or those examples.
Who was that?
They had to, like,
Mississippi State did.
Against BYU?
Yes.
Okay.
About 5 years
they need
ago.
to travel more towards the Texas neutral site or the Georgia neutral site. They need to go further. And further than, what other, you said? Further north than Clemson or further north than Kansas. That's what they need to start expanding. So we had a hell of a game. Like, I would say had a hell of a game going to Oklahoma, going into the USC. They got smoked at the time because USC was a very good team. It's still Pete Carroll.
Yeah, in the same span that Alabama has not traveled anywhere outside the conference to play, we can take a number of schools, for example. But since you're on Ohio State's gone to Miami. They've gone to Oklahoma. They've gone to Cal. They've gone to Virginia Tech.
Oh my! That game was that environment was something. And then of course the famous Braxton Miller spin move, and we smoked him in the second half. This started the whole Cardell Jones versus JT Barrett for the quarterback spot.
Absolutely. Okay, Roberto. Anything else, man?
Well, another thing is, like, you say they don't have to schedule a tough non-conference schedule, but you know who needs those tough non-conference schedules? Group of 5 teams. Especially the 2 years that UCF went undefeated in the regular season. And they didn't get any chance to go in the playoffs. And then the season in 2019, or is it 2018? Never mind. 2018. No. I need to look it up. 2019, they get Stanford and Pitt. Beat Stanford, but they lost to Pitt. So I think that's where, like, strength of schedule and especially non-conference benefits more group of 5 or benefits, up and rising team that wants to get a big win to get to that playoff spot.
Okay. All right, Roberto. Anything else?
Especially this year. Yeah, okay. One last thing. Especially this year's, like, Cincinnati going at Indiana and Notre Dame this year.
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked that they were, I think, higher ranked than Notre Dame. I'm like, that's an interesting game at the Irish Stadium. And probably going to give, I don't know, but like bulletin board material for Brian Kelly to smoke his ex-university where he coached. All right, yeah, that'll be it for me.
All right, Roberto. I appreciate the call. All right, folks, it's been a nice little 2.5 hour show or so here at the Voice of College Football. Thanks so much for chiming in, everyone. And your contributions are always welcome, of course, to keep us going. You can go to Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App and just search MarkRogersTV. Also, keep in mind that we've got post-game shows. And I believe I'll show those later. We've got a Notre Dame show coming up at 4 Eastern, but keep in mind these dates. September 2nd, 24-hour live stream. Post-game shows for all the teams that I mentioned before: Ohio State, Nebraska, Michigan, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Florida, Miami, Iowa, Florida State, and maybe somebody else I missed, Virginia Tech. And then obviously, again, consider contributing to keep us going here at the Voice of College Football. And if you got any sponsor ideas, we will take those as well. Appreciate everybody being here, and we will see you at 4 Eastern to talk the Fighting Irish.